also coming from Colonel Lenong's report. That was the door with the boot footprints on.
Yes.
My apologies, my lady. I see that they make black and white. They're clearly visible, but during the course of the day, we will replace it with color copies. So would your lady accept this as Exhibit BB? It is quite clear in black and white as well, but we will make the color copies available.
Thank you very much.
Colonel, would you be prepared to make available to us your telephone records of last night and this morning, meaning when you left court and before you come back? If we asked that, would you consent to that?
If you asked it, I can make it available.
Will you consent to that?
Yes.
Now, there is a trace analysis department
That's correct, my lady.
at the forensic science department.
That's correct, my lady.
You don't work there.
No, I'm not part of the trace analysis section. They are a separate section within the scientific analysis.
You in the materials
I'm in the
analysis.
materials analysis section, yes, my lady.
And your experience on trace analysis?
My lady, I was working with a trace analysis section, or in the trace analysis section, since the creation thereof in, I think it was 1999 or 2000, I'm not exactly sure now. But then I moved over to the materials analysis section later on. So I do have some trace analysis experience.
In the trace analysis department or section, you will get the certified tool mark examiners.
My lady, just to clarify, there is no certified tool mark examiners in the trace analysis section, neither in the materials analysis section. If you speak about tool mark, certified tool mark investigators, they all reside at the ballistic section.
I'm sorry, you're absolutely correct. I was wrong in putting. I was just reminded that it's in fact it's ballistics. And I was looking at your qualifications, your academic or theoretical qualifications in regard to trace evidence. Can you tell the court what that is?
Do you mean from my statement, or what?
Well, what qualifications do you have? What courses did you do?
Can I refer back to my affidavit? Is that what you're looking for, sir?
Well, if you can just tell us.
My lady, when I worked in trace analysis, I did some fiber comparisons, I did paint analysis, I did explosives analysis, I did physical matches, quite a lot of, and some other diverse analytical chemistry work as well, which was done on a variety of chemical substances and materials.
I'm looking at your, not experience, I'm looking at qualifications, courses that you attended, for how long it was, where it was.
If you allow me, my lady, I would like to refer to my statement and referring to paragraph 2.3 of my statement. There is a lot of courses that I did both locally and internationally that's given there, and I can start with the first one where I did the fire investigation course back in 1993.
Maybe, Colonel, if I can save time, I'm not interested in the fire investigations, I'm talking about trace evidence.
My lady, fire investigation is also a type of a trace analysis, because the analysis of the fire debris after the fire took place is also be considered to be trace evidence. But if he's not interested in the fire investigation, it's fine. I did SEM-EDX analysis, course in that. I attended a trace evidence school held at the South African Police Forensic Science Laboratory, in which was presented by the Trace Evidence Unit of the FBI in August 1998.
How long was that course?
That was a week-long course, my lady.
I accept that you know the work of the forensic science and introduction to scientific and investigative techniques by the edited one by Stuart James and John Nordby.
I'm not familiar with that specific article, no, my lady.
Will you accept, otherwise we can go through it, that the learned authors and so also other experts are clear that when you examine tool marks, that one essential part of that is a microscopical comparison?
My lady, depending on the type of tool marks you're referring to, I fully agree with them. If you do a tool mark investigation where a screwdriver was used to break open a lock and there's microscopic detail that is looked at, then I absolutely agree that one must make use of microscopes in order to view the detail you're looking for. And maybe I can just mention, my lady, that never did I claim that I am a certified tool mark investigator. Neither did I claim any of that in my statement. So the big thing about the tool mark, certified tool mark investigations is kind of, I don't know what the relevance thereof is.
When we spoke yesterday about the wooden pieces, the missing wooden pieces, you said and you agreed that it could have shed some more light on your investigation. You remember that?
That was correct, my lady.
Yes. And I think that was the reason why you said that you took some steps to try and locate the wooden pieces, the missing wooden pieces.
As I explained yesterday, my lady, I did. I cannot remember to who I spoke, but during the conversations about the missing pieces, I could not determine the location of the missing pieces.
You said you even went so far as to go to the SAP register, to try and find out what happened to these wooden pieces.
My lady, I cannot recall saying that I went to SAP's register. I said it was possible to go to probably a SAP 13 register to see what exhibits was submitted, but I did not say that I went to the register and inquired.
But someone must have checked for you, or you must have checked, or you must have asked someone to check whether those exhibits appeared in the SAP 13.
I never did a request like that, my lady, because the marks that I saw on the door that I compared with the cricket bat was, I was confident that I could explain the marks on the door and how it was created.
Can I read your evidence?
Yes, you may.
I cannot remember exactly who I spoke to, but nowhere did any of those exhibits appear in the SAP 13. Please explain that.
My lady, if that is my exact words, I want to correct it. As I said, I did not mean that I did an investigation to look at all the SAP 13 registers to try and locate that. And, I apologize if...
but it cannot be, with respect, it cannot be for you to have stated under oath that nowhere that any of those exhibits appear in the SAP 13. It can only mean one thing, that it was checked and it could not be found there. You agree?
That's why that is how it's understood from the sentence, Mr. Roux, correct now, my lady, but I want to correct myself in saying that what I meant yesterday was that during the conversations I had, I could not determine where it was, and if it was booked into a SAP 13, I did not have, I could not find any information about it being there. So,
when you were asked about it with reference to the events on 30 April 2012,
yes, my lady.
You said that you had tried to find out what would have happened to those wooden splinters, but no one could give you an indication. You remember that?
I remember that, my lady.
And could you remember who you spoke to?
As I said yesterday, and I repeated this morning, I cannot exactly remember during which conversation with whom did I try to establish what happened to.
Well, we know one thing. Let's work from there. It was 30 April 2012.
Yes, sir.
Now, that request or query could only have been in relation to your examination of the door. You now look for the missing wooden splinters or pieces.
My lady, maybe I can also just say that I didn't mean my conversations regarding the missing pieces was only on the 30th of April. Obviously, not being able to remember exactly who I spoke to, the exact date on which I got involved in the conversations would also be very difficult for me to recall now.
But we have dealt with the first part that you had no difficulty, or the part that I'm dealing with on the 30th of April 2012, when you were also looking for it. We've dealt with that. All I really want to know is, can you remember who you spoke to on that day?
My lady, that's why I'm saying, and I'm going to repeat myself, I cannot remember exactly in which conversation the missing pieces came up. It could have been also afterwards during the consultation, or when even with the photographer, when he brought me the photographs that he took of during my investigation. I honestly cannot remember who I was involved with the investigation, with the conversation.
Let's take it step by step. We have your answer in the query that you made on 30 April. I'm only dealing now, I'll come back to 8th of March. I'm only dealing with 30 April. And my understanding is you did ask for it, but you cannot remember who you spoke to.
That's correct, my lady.
Now, you could only have asked for it because you knew that you had to examine the door.
My lady, as I said, I cannot remember in which conversation it took place. Maybe it was afterwards that it was an idea of mine that what happened to the missing pieces. It was not that I engaged in the conversation because I wanted the missing pieces to proceed with the investigation.
Well, let's go back to your evidence. What is not in dispute that you held the view that those wooden pieces, and to quote you, could have shed some light on your investigation.
It could have, my lady, but I was happy with what I saw on the 30th of April, that I could explain the marks on the door and how it linked to the cricket bat.
And what we also know that on the 30th of April you examined the door.
That's correct, my lady.
What we also know on the 30th of April 2013, I'm sorry, that you asked about the missing wooden pieces. We've gone through that. You can take that evidence back, or you can just confirm it.
My lady, I said a lot yesterday, and if I confirmed it, then it's. If I said so, then it's probably like that. But it was not necessary for me to have those evidence to actually confirm what I did.
We're not talking now about what was necessary and what was not necessary. And this morning again, you confirmed on more than 2 occasions that on the 30th of April, because I took you to that every time, you asked about the missing pieces.
My lady, I already said that I cannot remember exactly on what date and what occasion I engaged in a conversation about the missing pieces, meaning that was it on the 30th of April, was it on the 12th of March, or whenever.
Colonel, you had no difficulty earlier in your evidence today to agree that on the 30th of April you asked about the missing pieces.
It's possible that I asked on the 30th of April as well for the missing pieces, but with whom I engaged in the
and if I may say, it was also not a possibility. You were quite clear on that. What was not clear is who you spoke to.
Yes.
You agree now?
Absolutely, madam.
Yes. Now let's take that now and see if it can be correct what you're saying. We know that is the day that you examined the door.
That's correct, my lady.
You agree that it would make good sense that when you must examine the door, that, and as you said, that you asked for the missing pieces.
Yes, my lady.
Yes. And of course, let's see who you could have asked. The one person is, of course, Captain Mangena, because he's there. He's with
one possible person. Yes.
He is, according to you, and if my understanding was correct, the person that preserved the door.
That's correct, my lady.
So that's the obvious person to ask.
That's can be concluded, yes.
Now, what I don't understand, we've seen the photograph. We've seen the photo right next to the door. On the 30th, we see the pieces, the missing pieces. We see them lying there. You remember that?
That's correct, my lady.
So common sense would only dictate to me, but of course you can assist us, that you ask Captain Mangena, where are the missing pieces in the door? They're lying there, and he would say to you, but Colonel, there they are.
That's possible. That's one possibility, my lady.
What would be the other possibility?
My lady, as I said, I cannot remember exactly who I spoke to and exactly the words that I used. I could have even mentioned it to my colleague in the office that I did not see the missing pieces myself. It was so. I just vaguely remember a conversation in which I was where I mentioned the missing pieces, and I really cannot shed more light on this, my lady.
But it's not, with respect, correct what you're saying. It's not that you mention it. Your evidence was clear yesterday, and that was also this morning. You asked about it. It's not a mentioning. You asked about it.
My lady, I also mentioned this morning that it could have been afterwards during my discussions with a photographer that took the photograph. So if I say I cannot remember exactly who I engaged with in this matter, then I really do not remember with whom I spoke about it.
But let's take it one step further. The door arrived in an evidence bag on the 8th of March 2013. There at the scene.
That's correct, my lady.
And then we see photos of the contents of that bag. It's opened, and we see the door, the panels, and that I term the missing pieces. Of course, they're not missing pieces. It's the little pieces. They're there.
If they were there, my lady, then I'm happy to
yes. Well,
accept it.
I've showed you the photos. Now we go to the second step. So that's relevant to the bag. Now again, we know that bag must come back to the 30th.
Yeah. My lady, just to clarify, the piece of wood that we saw on the picture that I was shown yesterday was the little piece on the right-hand side of that panel, which were in the picture in the middle of the passage as you entered the bathroom. That is the only one that I can remember now.
My lady, I want to object, and I apologize. I was just really thinking if an objection is necessary. So it's one question later. Mr. Rupert is witness. We see on the 8th of March the splinters on a photograph. Those photographs weren't shown to this witness. On the 8th of March, we're not talking about the photographs that were handed in this morning, because that's a different scene. So I would like Mr. Root just to make clear when he showed the photographs with the body bag and the splinters on the 8th of March.
You say they went together. It was a photograph of the body bag, the splinters.
On the 8th of March.
And yes, Mr. Root.
Maybe I will get the photos in the meantime. We will show the body bag, and I will come back on the 8th of March because that's my instruction, but you will see that's Exhibit AA. And we'll show that to the witness.
My lady, with the utmost respect, cannot be AA. AA was attached to a statement of Colonel Lenong, and those weren't there on the 8th of March, and that's my objection. Cannot be put to this witness.
And lady, I accept the photo that I saw. I thought it was 8th of March, but I'll come back to you. Can I work with this photo?
Yes, can you withdraw that question?
I will withdraw it in that sense. Thank you, my lady. Colonel, you've seen AA. Photo AA.
Is that the
body bag with the door, the panels, and little pieces. Not one piece, little pieces.
Yes, I saw it yesterday, my lady.
What bag is that, do you know?
It looks like a body bag on the photo, my lady.
Is that because you saw the body bag again on the 30th of April, not so? Or you saw it on the 30th of April?
I did not see it on the 30th of April. Well, on the photo I saw, it was there next to the door, between the two shelves against which the door was propped up against.
Well,
Okay, just 1 minute. I'm getting a little bit confused.
Yes.
What are you talking about? What is the witness talking about?
The body bag that I see in this picture, I see this is a body bag, and I saw on the picture yesterday there was one between the two shelves at ballistics on the 30th of April when I did the investigation. I would not be able to say whether it's exactly the same body bag, but
looks the same.
if it's possible, my lady.
Well, I'm asking because it was not identified as such. It was, I don't know, someone referred to it as a what? A plastic or something?
As a bag.
A bag.
Yeah, it's a bag.
Yes.
There was reference to body bag because it's a typical body bag that they put the door in, but it's a bag.
Thank you.
That's the one that you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. The one that was shown to me on the picture yesterday was of a, seemed like a plastic, which could have been the body bag between the shelves, my lady.
Now, we know there's a bag on the 30th, and we know there's a door, and we know there are the missing pieces.
Yes, my lady.
That we know.
Yes, my lady.
Your evidence yesterday, I want to read it to you, about the procedure on 30 April. You spoke about the height of the door from the floor and how high the marks would be, and you say, so when we put up the door there at the ballistic section on the 30th of April, it was not necessary for me to go back to the house.
That's correct, my lady.
So one thing we know is that you assisted in putting up the door.
At the house, my lady, yes.
Yes. No, I'm talking about the 30th of April.
No. I assisted at the house, my lady. I assisted in putting in the screws through the hinges to hang the door at the house on the 8th of March. At the ballistic section, I was called by Mr. Mongena that morning, and he said he's busy working on the door. I can come down and
May I read your evidence again?
Yes,
yesterday, verbatim? So, in relation to that, so when we put up the door, there at the ballistic section on 30 April, it was not necessary, and you carry on.
My lady, I physically did not put up the door against the shelf there. When I arrived downstairs at ballistics, the door was already standing against the shelf. And again, if that was understood that I physically put up the door, that was not what I meant, my lady.
Well, let me take you through that. And I'll put it in 3 questions. One is, when you gave that evidence, you had no difficulty to say, we put up the door. However, when you were confronted about the missing pieces, that was only then that you tried to, and I will read to you what you said then, that you tried to move away from your presence at the semblance of the door.
My lady, I'm confident that when Mr. Mangena gets into the witness stand, he will also confirm that the door was already put up against the shelves when I arrived downstairs. So, as I said, I did not physically took the door out of the bag and put it up against the shelf.
Of course, you may speak to Mr. Mangena and you get that corroboration. I understand that. Let's look at your evidence. I've given you the first part. We had no difficulty to say we put up the door. Then when you were confronted with the missing pieces, this is how far you could go then. And I read to you, that's on page 1027, you say, I asked you, when you arrived there, that's all the 30th, what did you do? Did you help to assemble the door? But now there was some confrontation about the missing pieces. You're more careful. Can I read your answer then?
Yes.
When you changed it, you said, as far as I can remember, the door was already in position. You were uncertain then. You moved there and said, well, I may have said we did, but as far as I can remember. Now something caused you now to become clear in your mind. What is that? Was it that you spoke to someone since?
No, I did not speak to anyone involved in the case since, my lady. It's this thing played over and over in my mind last night, and it's probably because of that I came to the conclusion this morning. The other thing is, on the 30th, the panels were not held in place by the little strip in the bottom there. So I can show you with the laser. That little strip was not in place like it is now, where I used little nails to keep it in place. It was kept in place with sellotape, if I can recall correctly, and the panels were moving. It was not like it is now, where there's no movement of the panels. So putting up the door and assembling the panels refers to us constantly having to push the panels in again.
Can I just understand you and hear your answer? Let's just get the correct position and then I move on. One is, you started off by saying we put the door up. You agree? Your initial evidence.
By meaning putting the door up, that was part of putting the door up, was trying to reconstruct it and putting the missing pieces or the loose pieces, trying to fit them in.
The second part was that as far as you can remember, the door was already in position. That was the second part.
Against the shelf, my lady, yes.
The third part is, I thought about it last night and I can now definitely say the door was assembled when I arrived there.
Yes, my lady.
And the fourth part is, when you talk about assembling, I'm talking about the little pieces that could be moving.
The loose panels in the door, not little pieces, the loose panels in the door.
I just want that clarity. You agree?
Yes.
The 4 versions.
Yes.
That I correctly
Yes, my lady.
put to you. Now, you told the court that, and I want to take you to the precise place that, including you, that you are as much in the service of the accused as the defense is.
That's correct, my lady.
And that you would be objective.
That's correct, my lady.
But then you said to the court, when I asked you about the print on the door that you'll come to, you said to the court, I was only there to work on marks caused by the cricket bat on the door and no more.
That's correct, my lady.
That was your sole instruction?
That's correct, my lady.
And for that reason you would not bother, you remember the words? Bother about the other marks.
I was not bothered. Yes, my lady.
Yes. And that was even so after you had read the version of Mr. Pistorius at the bail application.
I did not read the version of Mr. Pistorius at the bail application, my lady. I said specifically the first time I saw the version of Mr. Pistorius, and I did not see the entire version, was earlier next day, last week, up in the office where we sat, where the file was open at his version, and I just scanned through the page or two that was visible. That was the only time I had access to Mr. Pistorius' version on paper.
Colonel, I did not say that during the bail application you read it. I'm talking about his version at the bail application, that version given at the bail application. We know that you subsequently read it.
That's correct, my lady. But the way it was said, it said I read the version of at the bail application.
I understand. But now you've read it. You, as much in the service of the accused as the defense is. What now?
My lady, the reason for reading the version of that part of the version was not for any investigative purposes. My investigation was done already. So it was just walking past, and I saw it there, and I just read the little piece that was available or that was visible there. I did not even sit down with a file and page through it.
Wow.
So it was the reading of it was not to accustom myself with his version. It was just out of I had nothing to do at this stage, and I just scanned through that little bit that was visible, my lord.
Now, let's go to your first evidence in that regard. It's page 1038. You talk about sitting in the chambers, and then I asked you specifically, how did it happen that you saw that version? That's a reference to the version of Mr. Pistorius at the bail application.
That's correct, my lady.
And this is your answer. It was in general discussion there, and the trial was there, and I said, now is this Mr. Pistorius' version, and I read through it. That's your evidence.
Yeah. In general discussion, my lady, by meaning there was other discussions going on as well, and I noticed it there, and I mentioned it, and I just went through the little bit that was available. I did not sit down and read the entire version of Mr. Pistorius. That was not the purpose of me reading that. It was just something that happened in passing by.
And I can repeat the last part, and I read through it.
Read through that little bit that was available, or that was visible to me, my lady.
And are you saying now, in reading through it, you did not pick up that his version was that he had his prosthesis on, that he kicked the door, could not get it to break down, then took the cricket bat and bashed the door. Did you not read that?
I did not read that in the...
So what you're saying, in reading through it, you did not see that?
I did not see it, my lady.
Yes. But what you also said, coming back to this, is that you were only focused on the marks caused by the cricket bat.
That's correct, my lady. The marks that I suspected to have been caused by the cricket bat.
On the door?
On the door, my lady.
That was your sole investigation?
That's true, my lady.
And anything else, all the additional marks, you ignored?
I ignored those that I could not immediately link with the cricket bat, because I know there was other investigations going on different issues on the door, and it was not my intention to investigate other marks.
And because your investigation was solely focused on the marks of the cricket bat on the door, that's all you would do?
That's correct, my lady.
What about the investigation of the prosthesis?
What about that investigation, my lady?
Tell the court.
I got the prosthesis afterwards, and I had to examine a little bit of damage, or a mark on the shin of the one prosthesis, as I mentioned yesterday, my lady, and I could not determine by looking at the mark what could have caused it. Specifically, there could have been various reasons why that mark was made on the prosthesis.
Did you not say to them, I'm not doing this, I am only focused on the marks that could have been caused by the cricket bat on the door?
No, my lady, that was a separate issue. It was not to do with the marks on the door.
Yes, I understand it's a separate issue, like the foot, the prosthetic foot on the door is also a separate issue. Like the prosthetic legs, that's also a separate issue.
I was not requested to do analysis on the prosthetic foot, my lady. Trace analysis, I did some fiber comparisons, I did paint analysis, I did explosives analysis, I did physical matches, quite a lot of, and some other diverse analytical chemistry work as well. Which was done on a variety of chemical substances and materials.
I'm looking at your, not experience, I'm looking at qualifications, courses that you attended, for how long it was, where it was.
If you allow me, my lady, I would like to refer to my statement and. Referring to paragraph 2.3 of my statement is...
Would you be prepared to make available to us your telephone records of last night and this morning, meaning when you left court and before you come back? If we asked that, would you consent to that?
If you asked it, I can make it available.
Will you consent to that?
Yes.
Now, there is a trace analysis department.
That's correct, my lady.
At the forensic science department.
That's correct, my lady.
You don't work there?
No, I'm not part of the trace analysis section. They are a separate section within the scientific analysis.
You in the materials
section. I'm in the materials analysis section, yes, my lady.
And your experience on trace analysis?
My lady, I was working with a trace analysis section, or in the trace analysis section, since the creation thereof in, I think it was 1999 or 2000, I'm not exactly sure now. But then I moved over to the materials analysis section later on. So I do have some trace analysis experience.
In the trace analysis department or section, you will get the certified tool mark examiners.
My lady, just to clarify, there is no certified tool mark examiners in the trace analysis section, neither in the materials analysis section. If you
also coming from Colonel Lenong's report. That was the door with the boot footprints on.
Yes.
My apologies, my lady. I see that they make black and white. They're clearly visible, but during the course of the day, we will replace it with color copies. So would you, lady, accept this as Exhibit BB? It is quite clear in black and white as well, but we will make the color copies available.
Thank you very much.
Colonel,
You speak about certified toolmark investigators. They all reside at the ballistic section.
I'm sorry, you're absolutely correct. I was wrong in putting. I was just reminded that it's in fact it's ballistics. And I was looking at your qualifications, your academic or theoretical qualifications in regard to trace evidence. Can you tell the court what that is?
Do you mean from my statement, or what?
Well, what qualifications do you have? What courses did you do?
Can I refer back to my affidavit? Is that what you're looking for, sir?
Well, if you can just tell us.
My lady, when I worked in